What to do about morale? That's the subject of this podcast. Um, in working with businesses all these years, it's been very hard to get businesses to concern themselves with anything other than people's behavior. You know, they look at results and behaviors and goals and this, and we would attempt to point people towards what's going on inside the person. What's their state of mind? How well do they have their head together? What's their feeling state? Because we see that as the prime mover. But businesses, to varying degrees, have a problem with that. They feel like that's none of their business, or we're being intrusive, or we don't have time for that. But the one place where businesses 100% are willing to look deeper into where the person's coming from is morale. You use the word bad morale to any company, and they're going to say, "Oh, we don't care about that. That's not our problem. Or that's not our department." Or, let's go back to the objectives. They know that bad morale is bad for business, and that's universally respected. And that's why I'm making this podcast is to contrast the way morale is traditionally dealt with versus the way morale would be dealt with an understanding of the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. Okay? Now, traditionally, as soon as the boss hears this bad morale, first thing they say is retreat. Bring in a facilitator. Get people away from the office, and we'll have a retreat. And by and large, I'm not saying this is always the case, but by and large, the logic of the retreat is, if you have bad morale, there's certain problems that exist that account for that bad morale, and we can air those problems, okay? And at the very least, we'll get the problems off people's chests, and that will improve morale in and of itself. And then, even better prospect would be that we'll actually solve some of the problems, you see? And then when you solve the problems, the morale will be better on a go-forward basis. That's the logic. Get it off people's minds, get it off people's chests, and solve the so-called problems that are causing morale. Or I should say that are so-called causing morale. So I'm going to suggest that they're not. It's the other way around. But the traditional view is that the morale would be great, but for these problems that we have. Okay? And that's the traditional view. And that's usually accomplished at the retreat. At least the first one is always accomplished. So after every morale retreat that you have, you'll see an improvement in morale. And X number of them, you'll see certain problems that have been solved. And that appears to provide a lot of promise. If you go back to the company 6 months later after the retreat, you'll see that there's still this new things on people's minds, new things that account for their bad morale. And you'll find that some of the solutions that were proposed didn't have legs. They couldn't pull it off. And that's not a surprise, because if there was an obvious solution that people saw and could get behind, that problem would have been solved before you had the retreat. So there's a form of corporate recidivism with regard to the issue of morale. Okay? So that's what is done traditionally. Let's talk about what could be done that is more consistent with the nature of people. Okay, and the first point I'd like to make in that regard, kind of to set this up, is you want to see morale as a totally individual issue. Morale exists in the minds of each individual. You know, it doesn't appear to be that way. Like the idea of a retreat, as well as morale, is in the corporate culture here. It's in the company. Got to get everybody together. But in actual fact, it only exists in the minds of the people. So, for example, if some bright corporate executive decided, I do want to solve the morale thing, but it takes time to have retreats. I think what I'm going to do is, we're closed between Christmas and New Year's. I'm going to bring in my morale experts between Christmas and New Year's, when everybody's gone and we don't have to waste people's time on this, and we'll solve the morale problem. You couldn't do that, because the morale problem exists in the minds of each person. So something has to change inside the mind of each person for the morale to change. It doesn't exist out there anywhere. It's very personalized. Okay, that's the first point. The second point is that morale is 100% an issue of how people feel. Okay, that's all morale is. Morale is that the feelings that you have in the individuals in the company is not good for business. Either they're resentful, or people are dissatisfied, or they're stressed out. So that's all it means, is that morale is nothing more than how people feel within the company. So that was my second point. My next point is that the way people feel, the way each individual feels, is 100% nothing more than what they're thinking in real time at that moment that they're feeling that. So people feel their thinking. So if a person is resentful at 9 o'clock, and you were able to look at that person's thoughts at 9 o'clock, you would see thoughts that would beget resentment. See that they, felt badly about what someone else did, or they had angry thoughts, or thoughts of blame, and the feeling of resentment that they had. If you could see the thoughts, you see it is exactly what those thoughts were, is how they felt. You see? So if you get a company of 50,000 people and there's so-called bad morale in the company, all it would mean is that people are having these thoughts that are creating the bad feelings that we're labeling as morale. Now, you'd also find that of the 50,000 people, there's quite a range in terms of where the people's feelings are. Okay, so some people thrilled to be working there. Other people find it a grim existence. Well, you could see that difference in their thoughts. I said there was a certain recidivancy, that people get things off their chest and then later they're back on their chest. It's because morale is an issue of thinking. And if people think a certain way, they're going to have a certain feeling, and they're going to find different subjects, different focuses. But if the thinking is going to create that feeling. So if you get a person that, say, they worry sometimes, you go over and help them take all the worries off their mind. Well, if they worry tomorrow, have those thoughts of worry, they're going to have feelings of worry tomorrow. You see? So the answer lies in people's thoughts and their thinking. And it's it's tremendously helpful to people to understand that that's what causes the feelings that they're having. And for them to understand that but for those thoughts, they wouldn't be having those feelings.